All righty, everybody. We are live today with the one, the only Joel Salatin, the lunatic farmer of Polyface Farms. How are you doing, Joel?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Nicole.
Awesome. And we've got John Willis here. So, John, meet Joel. You've met before. We had you on a while ago. We had some tech problems, but I'm glad to have you back with updated internet and a new computer configuration.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you right up front, Nicole and John, I'll be, I've just had surgery on my mouth to get three implants from an old logging accident from, 30 years ago. And so the stitches are still in there. So if I look funny or talk funny, I mean, I always look funny, but if I look funnier than normal or talk a little bit odd, it's because I've had this surgery and still have a kind of funny swollen there along my mouth. So there we are. But it is what it is. Life goes on, and we just don't miss a beat.
Yeah, we do the best we can. I feel you on the mouth pain. I had some of that earlier this year and had to try to pretend it didn't matter. It seems like that one's more annoying than any other kind.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right.
so I have a question for you, Joel, before we get into the meat of the conversation, and that is this. So you write books, you go out and you speak. You are very gracious with your time to come on live streams. How do you also get farming done with all of those things going on?
Well, well, I don't have a TV, so that helps a lot. And and I also don't have a smartphone, so that also helps a lot. So I've never played at a video game. I don't watch TV, and yeah, to do this, I just ran in from outside. That's why I'm all just kind of discombobulated. I've been building a set of ramps out there. So anyway, yeah, we just and I have a great team. I mean, I'm now the most expendable person on the farm. Daniel runs our son runs day-to-day operations, and so I'm when I leave, nothing happens. So from a day-to-day standpoint, I'm the least important cog in the wheel here now. Now, fortunately, I'm still beneficial. Dan gives me my work assignments. He says, before you leave, you got to do this and this and this. And so he gives me my work assignments, but it's wonderful to be at this point in life and be able to kind of pick my projects.
John, what are you focusing on this week at SOE?
We're inside. I mean, it's hot. It's 85 degrees. I put 6 more trees in the ground yesterday and day before. We had massive rain in a very short amount of time, so we're just normal stuff. It's just a little warmer and more humid right now.
Awesome. And those folks on the live stream, I'm monitoring you a little differently than usual this time. Please put your questions in all caps so that I can see them. I see that you're there in the live chat, and definitely share and recommend anybody who you think would want to hear from Mr. Salatin uh, about anything. I mean, this is the time to get the question you've always wanted to ask Joel in. I'm going to start with the gloom and doom question everybody's asking right now. Do you think we're heading into a time of hard times and trouble, Joel?
Oh man, yes, I do, but nobody knows how deep it'll be. You know, uh, there's an old saying, ain't nobody thrown a ball so high that it didn't come down. And I think that's a little bit of where we are here. We've been high rolling for a long time. There's just so many good sayings. Hard times make
Soft
good
man.
people. Good people make easy times, and easy times make hard times. So there's a lot of things, but I mean the confluence of societal dysfunction, the cost of healthcare, the economy, the dollar, the spending, the profligate spending. I mean the fact that basically, what is it, like 85% of the federal budget is unalterable. So when they talk about trying to change the federal budget. They're only talking about 10 or 15% of it is even up for, everything else is Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. It's guaranteed transfer payments of some sort or another, and interest on the federal debt. And so China and Russia are certainly moving away from the U.S. dollar. They're not, they're buying petroleum in other denominations now, which takes the dollar off the U.S. Trade deal. We've got and this whole war in Ukraine. I mean, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but that's just a real issue. Censorship, societal things, the border, the open border. I mean, we're being invaded right now. The suicide, the teen suicide rate. When they talk about all these, 100,000 deaths from fentanyl. My question is, well, why does somebody take fentanyl? Why is somebody looking for those drugs? I mean, we have a society that can't make people happy enough to not have to experiment with buying stuff on the street corner. That's insane. And so I just see a lot of breakdown. And so, interestingly, I kind of follow the libertarian Doug Casey, the international man. And he had a very interesting blog post actually yesterday, and it was going back to October 9, 1929. And I had, maybe I've been, under a rock somewhere, but, it's funny how the older you get, the more you don't know. And one of the things that I learned from his post yesterday, I always thought, again, I'm not a student of this, so, I'm just kind of, you get osmosis from, what you think you hear. And I've always thought that the crash of 29 was pretty precipitous, like in a day, people woke up and, and the stock market crashed 50% or something in a day, but it didn't. On October 29, it only dropped 12%. Now that's significant. I grant that's significant, but it took almost 3 years to actually hit bottom. It wasn't until way into 1932 that it actually bottomed out. And I never realized, again, maybe I've been living under a rock and I'm just, being honest about my ignorance, but I always thought it was way more precipitous than that. And his point was that the next one coming, and he definitely thinks we're going to be into some crazy times, that the next one will be the same way. And so, here we are in real time. There were things like Silicon Valley Bank failures in August of 1929. There were things like that happening. And there were prophets out there, saying, hey, it's going to, but only a very tiny handful. And they were demonized. They were called unpatriotic, un-American. They were, fear mongers, blah, blah, blah. And as it turned out, the whole thing was slow enough. It was slow enough that the narrative could continue to obfuscate the real issues. And the populace never really got what happened. They never really understood it because it rolled out slow enough that the narrative could be tweaked week by week by week to keep the pressure off of the real causes. And so yeah, I think we're going into some really strange times, and I think that the black swan of COVID, it whether you believe it was orchestrated in a conspiracy or whether it was just somebody's big mistake, the fact is that it like nothing in my lifetime showed the duplicity of people to accept a narrative when nothing about the narrative made sense. Nothing about the narrative made sense. And so that's the scariest part as we head into this. So, as society begins to kind of dysfunction and fall apart, normally what happens is the powers that be try to to maintain control. And so usually before the actual whatever bottom, there's a fair amount of tyranny as the powers that be try to hold on to their power as things start to lose their grasp.
Well, it's the wounded animal, and they're in the death throes, and they're very, very dangerous, right?
Right.
I saw the FDA had came out. I saw it yesterday that by 2030, their goal is to have no coal-fired power plants and no natural gas power plants. So what does that leave? They always telegraph that punch, right? They always tell you, hey, this thing might happen. They war game like Event 201 happened a year before we had ever heard of COVID. They've got the patents on the vaccines before any citizen had ever heard of the virus. And now they're telegraphing, cold, dark winter and prepare for blackouts. And why shouldn't we believe them when they say those things? I mean, they've always said those. We just don't pay attention, as the average man doesn't listen to them.
I think you really hit the nail on the head there, John. I think that if there's one thing that I was struck with from the COVID fiasco, it was to pay attention to the musings of powerful people. Biden has said, prepare for starvation. We used to just think that the musings of these powerful people like Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab and people like that was, they're living in some sort of la la land. What do the rich know? They don't know anything. Well, the fact is that they do know a lot. They know an awfully lot. They know what the agendas are, and they know things. Probably the most powerful one that I ever was personally involved with was I was going to speak in Sweden, and the trip was paid half by a private organization and half by the Royal Agricultural College of Sweden. And about 3 weeks before I'm to go, I get this frantic call from the nonprofit that says, "Hey, the Royal College has pulled their funding. What no, I don't know if we can have you." I said, "Well, that's fine. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out." And so a couple of days later, they called back and said, "Hey, we got some alternative funding. We're good to go. We're okay." So I get to Sweden. I do my workshops and seminars and things like that, and I'm having dinner with the host. And I said, "So tell me, what's the deal? The Royal College pulls out. What's the big deal?" He says, "Oh, well, the story on that is that Monsanto came and they told the Royal College that if they would get rid of their environmental sciences department and 9 professors, that Monsanto would fund the entire ag college." And during the discussions, they found out that I was coming, and Monsanto said, "Yeah, and by the way, we're not gonna pay for that guy either." And so the college did it. They did it. They got rid of them and all that. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, Sweden, Monsanto's in the grain business. They grow corn and soybeans. What in the world do they want with Sweden? Sweden's a bunch of halfway Eskimos. What's the deal with Sweden? And he said, "Oh, well, because of global warming, they believe that all the north of Scandinavia that's currently tundra, all that Norway, Sweden, and Finland, all that cold region is going to be the new breadbasket of the world. And so Monsanto's moving in to try to be in position there when that all becomes corn and soybean country, to be in position to control it." And it just, it was almost laughable. It struck me. Oh, so that's what they talk about. When you see the TV pan over to these, these world leaders, and they're sitting there, doing their photo ops. And do you ever wonder, what are they really talking about? What are they really saying behind those closed doors? And for me, that experience in Sweden was one of the closest and first times I ever got that close to finding out, here's what they're actually saying behind those closed doors.
Yeah, I wonder what they're going to do if it cools instead, and that becomes a great iceberg.
Right, right, exactly. When I was in high school, that's what was going to happen, right? By now we were going to be in a new mini ice age when I was in high school. But who knows? But it does the sheer hubris of these technocrats to think that the world is some sort of a marionette on their fingertips that they can just kind of orchestrate and move is an incredible prideful kind of thing, and I think they're probably in for a rude awakening. But listen, think what you could do. This is another thought that I've had lately. Just thinking through some of this. Look, Bill Gates says that if we don't get rid of half the planet's human population, we're all going to die. All right. So we got to get rid of half the humans or we're all going to die. Now, I want you to just think a minute. What could you morally justify doing if you actually believed that by killing half the people on the planet, humans would survive? That you could be the savior of humanity if you killed half the planet? What could you justify doing? I'll tell you, I have really meditated on that recently, ever since I knew that's his official public position. And I'll tell you, there's not much that would be off the table, is there? I mean, there's not much that would be off the table.
Yeah, I don't think anything's off the table except for kill yourself, because he seems self-interested in not killing himself.
Yeah, why? The place to start is with yourself, Bill. That's a good place to start. But of course, he thinks he's going to be the savior to lead us all into a promised nirvana land after half of us are gone.
Well, you have the world leaders, the World Health Organization and Davos, and the big interest and the biggest threat to society, they say, is the United States being armed. Anytime you disarm a society, you can see everywhere in history what has happened after the disarmament of a society. And I think that is exactly what they want to do. It's not about the guns. It's about us being able to defend ourselves and then being able to do what they want to us. What's next? Buses, camps, trains. It's everywhere all through history. Holodomor is a very good example. I mean, Ukraine, where this mess is right now. Look at the history of those lands right there. And it's not so long ago where they put fences around those whole areas and just starved all those people to death.
Right. And so then you come up to, so what is the most resilient thing you can do? The most resilient thing you can do is not build up your 401k plan. The most resilient thing you can do is get on a property with some skill, with some people who know how to do things that you don't do or don't know how to do, and invest in relationship, skill, and land and ecology. I mean, that's where we need to get to where we're surrounded by people who know how to grow things, build things, and fix things. And ultimately that's going to beat a 401k plan altogether.
Almost like Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah, almost.
So Joel, how well do you know your neighbors around you?
It's a bittersweet, it's a catch-22. So, I've always kind of, and I'll confess a little bit smugly, maybe said that, well, my community is not my proximate neighbors. It's our customers. It's our friends within the clean food movement. Those are our real friends. And, I was really challenged at the Rogue Food Conference in Tennessee by I can't remember the fellow's name who spoke, the dairy guy who has started the MAG,
Bradley Bleasdale.
Yes, that's right. And it's this mutual aid group. And literally it's with his neighbors. Now, I don't know if it's with his absolute neighbors or not, but for me, my neighbors have called me Typhoid Mary and a bioterrorist because I don't vaccinate my cows. And yet they're great people. I mean, we vote the same way. That's the tragedy of it. We agree on a lot of the same things. We're all church going, honorable. I always say, I trust them with my bank account and my granddaughter. So let me tell you what we're doing this summer. What we're doing this summer is I'm inviting these neighbors, literally our closest, our adjacent neighbors, one by one, family by family throughout the summer to come and have dinner with us on Monday night with our whole, farm crew. And I mean, somebody has to blink first, and we're going to blink first. We're going to say, we might disagree, but we're living here together, and there might be a time when we need each other, and maybe we can put aside our differences about glyphosate and and mRNA livestock vaccine jabs, and we're actually going to be trying to cobble together a gasification deal and figure out how to run a chainsaw on alcohol. Maybe that's where it's going to go in the future. And so we're committed to cultivating this. And your question is poignant, and I find it very convicting. But I hope everybody understands it's been hard to reach out really aggressively to people who really think that we're out to hurt them. And so do we just, we wave on the road, we smile, we chat, but we don't have each other over for dinner. And that's the next, I'm convicted about that. I admit it. And we're gonna fix this.
I think it's awesome that you were blinking first, because something that I've been thinking about a lot right now with the Self-Reliance Festival, our theme is Find Your Tribe. And when we say that, sometimes people think find people who vote like I do, who live like I do, who have all of the same opinions I do. But what really happens when you start finding people with whom you develop community is you discover, much to your dismay, you don't agree on everything. And the key is, if you agree on some really basic core things, like I respect what's none of my business in your life. Those are your choices that you make. I empower your ability to live your life. I don't think you should be killed for stupid reasons. Like, I think murder is bad. I think if we agree to work together on creating a world around us where multiple ones of us are growing food so that we can empower the whole community, we are much stronger to weather whatever changes happen in society, in our economy, with the weather, one year to another year. If somebody has a cancer incident, when we have that support network, which used to be stronger when we needed it, then we have to learn how to say, okay, we don't agree on this thing, but does it really matter? Like, we can talk about that and have an enjoyable debate, even if you like to debate. But does that really matter when the mission is this other thing?
Right.
And
I couldn't agree more. And this is why the cancel culture is so bad, is because we can't have conversations that are even close to uncomfortable for us, and that's a tragedy, because actually what we need to be finding is stuff to our bridges to work on, or to bridge, rather than try to find or concentrate on where we disagree. And so I guarantee you, in our community here, a community of very, 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 very conservative farmers, man, if we want to talk about what we disagree on, hey, we wouldn't even get off of first base. But there is a lot. They love their land, they love their kids, they love health, they love freedom. I mean, they're right there. There's like 4 big issues. We can agree on those, and we can say, well, how do we How do we pull together if the chips go down? How do we pull together? And who's to say that my neighbor that right now thinks I'm an idiot for using compost, and he thinks he's really intelligent for using Vladimir Putin's chemical fertilizer. If push comes to shove, if I've blinked first and reached out first, who's to say that wouldn't soften down to where he'd say, hey, you've got this big industrial chipper. I want to try some compost and try to reduce my, purchase of fertilizer. But as long as we just wave on the road, we don't make progress.
Yep. I think John's strategy is just to convince everybody in the world they want to move near him who are attracted by his YouTube channel. Is that your strategy, John?
No, my strategy is to do what I believe is right for my family and those immediately around me, and do things in my life every day that I want to do. And the people who agree with that will be attracted. I want the right people to show up, right? I don't want to have to change their minds and convince them. And if they're of value, then they can be very close. And if they're not, they're free people and they can do what they want to do. But if you move to the most impoverished county in all of Tennessee, you're coming here because you want more freedom or because you want to be around the complete opposite of that. So hopefully we just demonstrate what it is that we do, and then the right people show up.
Okay, I've got a question in from Mia about mRNA vaccines. What is the deal with mRNA vaccines in livestock?
Well, the deal is that they've been used for a lot longer than we thought. This just really broke here in the last month. Most of us, again, talk about naive. I thought that mRNA was really developed by the Trump team and the pharmaceutical companies with a fast track thing during 2020. But it turns out that we've had mRNAs going into poultry since about 2012, and pork since about 2015, and beef starting about a year and a half or so ago, 2 years ago. And so as this has now leaked out, what we're seeing are state legislatures. Probably the most aggressive one right now is Missouri, who is putting in, trying to put in legislation to require mRNA. I refuse to call it a vaccine. It's genetic manipulation, and in fact, the legislation calls it, gene manipulated therapy. And I think they're struggling with the language as well. What do you call this? So anyway, trying to require it on a label so that you have this right to know kind of concept. And of course, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association has come out saying, well, there are no licensed mRNA vaccines, available. But that's clever speak. That's clever speak. Because there's a big difference between use and license. Like we saw with COVID, there's emergency use, there's trial use, there's contingency use, there's all sorts. The FDA has all sorts of categories that something can be used before it's actually publicly licensed. And so the industry uses whatever the public naivety and ignorance to spin the narrative, and because we don't we assume that, well, if it's not licensed, I guess nobody's using it. But the fact is, there are a whole lot of pre-licensed categories that it's being tested, or emergency, or contingency, or conditional. That's another one, big conditional. There are all these categories of use, and so yes, it is in there. The spike protein is being found in animals. It's being found in people who eat the animals, and fortunately, there is now a burgeoning protocol in the wellness community to detox mRNA. And so there's all sorts of protocols now developing. They're in their infancy, but I'm confident, these people are trying to beat biology, but actually biology beats them, and biology will always beat them. But yeah, that's what's going on with the mRNA. It's here, it's in us, and so, and the worst thing is that many farmers don't know that the vaccines they're using are mRNA or not, or of the old, the old traditional types, and so the best thing to do right now to protect yourself is simply to only eat meat and drink milk from farms that don't use any vaccines at all.
Yeah.
And shameless plug, we don't use any vaccines at all. I'll just, straight up front.
Shocked.
We don't use any at all. So, this is going to be a new front out here to deal with.
So you can order your meat from Polyface Farms online, shipped to your door, right?
Yes, you can. I don't want to, get too mercenary here, but I tell you, listen. We have a lot of initiatives around this country right now to defund this, defund the police. Listen, if we're going to defund something, we need to defund Monsanto, defund Cargill, defund Tyson. I mean, that's who needs to be defunded. And we do that by how we spend our money.
Yeah, and when we have conversations about underground networks, I think the key to building your underground network is doing commerce with each other. And sometimes that looks like ordering meat from Polyface, or it looks like getting your tactical gear from John Willis, or getting your coffee from Holler Roast, or any other of a myriad of small businesses that are popping up. I think, when we look at these events that we've been doing, I know from Rogue Food Conference, people walk out of there and start businesses. I know people who have started food churches in Tennessee because they
Right.
saw Nethi speak, and that's cool. So let's support each other.
Yes, couldn't agree more. Yep.
What were you going to say, John?
Oh, I was going to say defund the FDA.
Yeah, defund
yeah.
the FDA.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
if we start with the 3-letter federal agencies, we're going to have a pretty long list to defund, aren't we?
Yep.
It seems like Massey and those guys are kind of on that journey.
Yes. Yeah, they are. He actually spoke this weekend at our farm with the Rogue Food Conference. We had 400 folks here. It was the biggest Rogue Food we've had, and man, it was dynamite. It was the 6th Rogue Food conference, and we had Amos Miller here, who, if you're following the front line of this food choice issue, he's the right now the lightning rod. And his paralegal was here, Tracy, and she was a barn burner. I couldn't have been more excited about what she had to say. And so yeah, this thing is getting traction, and we're real excited to see the traction build.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, another question comes from Dawn. Are there any current stories in progress about sidestepping government regulations with the food police? So what good stick it to the man food stories do you have, Joel?
Well, I mean, there are numerous initiatives. I mean, one obviously is Nethi Bali with the food church concept, and of course she's just swinging away and continues to make progress. There's the entire private membership association movement, PMA, and there are more and more of those PMAs going. I will tell you that, in fact, at this conference, I talked to a Florida attorney who's on the front line of the whole PMA thing. It was a good conversation. I'll be very personal here, if you don't mind, because I've been in a quandary about this PMA thing, personal membership association. So basically, this is a private membership association modeled after the old country club idea, which gets you out from under basically government oversight, including workman's comp, you know, all sorts of things, and of course food regulations, because it's private, not public. I will tell you, Amos Miller had a fantastic one-liner. I'm going to give it to you now, so I don't forget it, and to pass it on to you. He said in court, the other side, the state keeps saying, we got to protect the public, protect the public, protect the public. Here was his line. You'll love this, Nicole. He said, okay, well, you guys can protect the public. I'm trying to protect the private. I just thought that was such a succinct comeback, in the whole deal. But anyway, the private membership association is pretty much limited to, you can't be too big, because then they say you're public.
Yeah.
And so it does have some scale issues. And here at our farm, we've tried over the years. Obviously, we've pushed into gray areas. We've had our battles. We've had our stuff. But right now we're legal. We co-own a slaughterhouse. We've positioned ourselves to be able to kind of thrive within the system. And she said that there's no reason to jeopardize all of that equity just because there's something, because there's a shiny object over here called the PMA or the food church or whatever. And the fact is that everybody that starts a PMA and a food church gets harassed by government regulators because they don't understand it. They don't know what you're doing. And so as soon as you start that, you're going to have to be ready for those knocks on the door, and they're not fun. They extract energy. And so are there stories? I mean, there's Mark Baker in Michigan, and he basically just takes a complete, this is the right of private contract. And, he does his thing, but again, because he's taking that extreme position, he doesn't sell anything off of his farm. In other words, you have to go to his farm in order to buy things. You have to go to his butcher shop in order to buy things. And some people have a different, I mean, like for us, we want to be able to go off farm with sales. And so, are there success stories? Absolutely there are. The guy in Oregon, can't think of his name now. He's the one that has writes up an agreement. Yeah. You write up an agreement, and you buy the animal, you take the meat, and he takes the guts. And so you can slaughter your own animal. He can slaughter his own animal. He gives you the meat. He keeps the guts. And of course, again, the state has fought and fought and fought. They're out after him every day, and he just digs his heel in. So are there success stories? Yes, there are. And Rogue Food Conference is trying to shine a light on those success stories. But I'll tell you what, every one of them is a every one of these people that's successful has to be literally a pit bull, irascible, will not bow. I mean, aggressive, and everybody's not like that. And I really appreciate that. So the other side of the story is that that there is building more and more interest within Congress to carve out, whether it's cottage food laws, whether it's giving states rights. Massey now has, I think, more than 50 sponsors of his Prime Act. I mean, you can say, well, that's not all that much. Yes, it is a lot. I mean, the ability, man, if you could go to red meat and pork and be able to sell it by the cut to your neighbors without inspection, I mean, that would reverse 80 years of government control. So is it incremental? Yes. Is it as far as I'd like to go? No. But is it big? Yes, it's big. And there is building and building and building momentum. So that's another part of the story that needs to be told as well.
Yeah, and I do think it's important for folks who are, because I help a lot of people start their businesses, because they'll come to me and they'll be like, what should I do to start? And my answer is usually start. Well, what about the regulations? Start and figure it out. Most of the time when you start a small business, they are not up your nose yet. But if you are going to do something outside of the existing regulatory environment, like a private ministry or private membership association, you will be challenged when you get to a certain size. I think that's just going to happen because for two reasons. One, they may have never whoever is inspecting you or decides they can inspect you may never have come across that before, and it's your job to educate them. And two, you are a threat to the existing system, and you are going straight in the eye of the bureaucracy. And the bureaucracy would like to continue to exist and to make itself relevant. Therefore, you're not cool. Every time we hear stories about people successfully pushing that off, something I've noticed is they always end up winning because they had a strong community that was also behind them, and they were able to make the bureaucrats look really stupid. Like, there is a PR aspect to that, and that's a lot of work when you're under fire.
Oh,
and it's important to know that.
Yeah, absolutely. It saps you. I mean, we've never gone to jail. We've never been fined. We've had our meat confiscated before, put under police tape. So, we've been that far. We've had our livelihood threatened and challenged. They've told us they're going to shut us down completely. But you're right, Nicole. We have fought back politically. So we immediately call our senator. We immediately call our delegate. And again, I'm challenged. When's the last time you had you took some barbecue chicken into your sheriff's office and said, thank you guys for being out there, and build relationships with your sheriff. Sheriff has a lot of power. They have a lot of power. And Max Kane up in Wisconsin, who's been on the front lines of this for a long time. He actually got so friendly with his sheriff and that he got the sheriff to agree that if the feds ever came in on his farm, the sheriff would not let them set foot on his farm. Now that's pretty cool. Talk about some some insurance. That's good insurance. If you can have such a good relationship with your sheriff, and your sheriff understands his position well enough to say, yeah, I'll I've got your back. That's a good thing.
Do the feds roll straight into a farm, or do they notify local law enforcement before coming to the farm?
Normally they don't notify anybody, but that being said, I don't know any cases where they've shown up as a surprise. There's usually phone calls, there's correspondence, there's visits. If they're going to show up like that, it probably means they've been there a couple of times and you've thrown them off and told them don't come back without a warrant or something like that. There's an escalation. I don't know. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are cases where they've come when a complete surprise. But most of the time, all the cases I'm familiar with, there's always been a month, 2 month, 4 month preamble of some skirmishes before they actually show up with the guns.
Got it.
Isn't that crazy? They show up with guns because you sell your neighbor meat that you raised in a wholesome way.
Yeah, and Nicole, here's the kick. The big kicker is that you can give that meat to your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
It's only when
you can give that meat to your neighbor, but if you take a penny for it, you're now a criminal. So it's clearly not about safety. This is the thing that's infuriating about the argument. They always talk about we've got to protect the public. Protect the public from what? Obviously, it's not food safety. It's not risk of bad food, because if it were, I wouldn't be able to give it away.
Yeah.
So obviously, they're protecting the public from choice. They're protecting the public from exercising their choice as consenting adults.
Yeah,
that's what they're protecting the public from.
They have to get their cut, and they have to justify their cut through all the nonsense.
Yep. Well, and the funny thing is, it's not that any of us are evading taxes at that,
No,
when we sell it, like when I sell things through my company, it's part of the tax filing
right,
that I do every year.
right.
It is what it is. And that's that. So it's the additional permitting fee and inspections and paying all the people that have to be involved in making sure my facility is set up the way they want it to and all of that crap that's their cut that they're not getting.
Yeah, I have a friend that runs a smokehouse, a little federal inspected smokehouse. He gets well, not little. It's pretty good size. He gets tractor trailer loads of hams out of North Carolina. He's totally in the industrial system, but he's got a cool recipe. He's got a bit of a regional brand, and anyway, he walks out on the front stoop one day, and there's six federal cars parked in his lot there, his little smoke place, and he actually went back in, got a double barrel shotgun, walked out on the porch and just fired it off in the air a couple shots. And he told those guys, he said, there's not enough money in the country to pay all you people. I mean, they're parasites. And they're like blood sucking parasites in the food system. And they make food. Here's the the evil of it all. They make food unnecessarily expensive, especially good food.
Yeah.
They give a free pass to junk food, but good food, they they harass and hassle and make inordinately expensive so that people are pushed or incentivized to buy junk stuff instead of the good stuff.
Right, but chicken McNuggets are okay.
Totally
exactly.
okay.
Yeah, and
That's
Coca-Cola.
like,
Right.
yeah. Well, and it's the obesity epidemic. Well, what's driving that?
Well, I mean, look at their food pyramid. Look what they're feeding the kids in the government schools.
Yeah. Yeah, you push people into the things that make them unhealthy and then wonder why it's happening. Well, they don't wonder. I'm sure they know.
Yeah.
I'm sure they know. That's just me though. Okay, so Joel, you're coming to Self-Reliance Festival, and I don't know if you know what you got yourself into, but it's going to be a great one this time. We have a lot of demos going on of what I call lost skills, even though they're not really lost. Like I'm looking for somebody to do small engine maintenance because living on a homestead, I know the most aggravating thing in the world is when my lawnmower won't start and the carburetor needs to be rebuilt. This is why I have a lot of battery operated stuff, but learning skills like that, or cutting wood, or blacksmithing, or making cheese, like the full gamut of these things are going to be going on around the peripheral. And then there are presentations from the stage, and you're giving one. Have you put much thought to what you want to talk about, or are you going to decide that after you meet the people?
Oh no, I'll come prepared. I'm pretty spontaneous, but I'm not that spontaneous. I don't know yet what I'll be sharing, but I'm looking forward to it. And you're right, Nicole, when you said I don't know what I'm getting myself into. Very seldom do I know what I'm getting myself into. That's the kind of the story of our life, isn't it?
Yeah.
We don't know what we're getting into. You get married, you don't know what you're getting into. You have a baby, you don't know what you're getting into. You start your own business and walk out of the weekly paycheck. You don't know what you're getting into. You vote for a politician, you don't know what you're getting into, right? So anyway, I'm used to not knowing what I'm getting into, but it doesn't bother me. It keeps things really exciting, but I'm so looking forward to it. Yeah, you're exactly right. Those heritage skills are the kind of things that are still needed and are actually barterable. Those are barterable in a day. Everybody's talking about alternate economy. Is it crypto? Is it gold? Is it silver? Is it, what is it? And I think almost the most value anybody can bring to the table as an alternative economy is to know how to do something, whether it's plant a garden, can some squash, make some applesauce, prune an apple tree. I mean, those are just such critical foundational skills for for thriving and flourishing. I mean, I'm done wanting to survive. I'm not interested in survival. I want to be able to flourish when everybody else is having trouble.
Yeah, it's funny because I specifically didn't ask you to talk on a certain topic when we talked about you speaking, because I think when we get closer to the event, there'll be something that it makes the most sense for you to speak on, and you have such a vast repertoire. You can talk about farming, you can talk about everything I want to do is illegal, you can talk about what's going on in Ukraine, because you're like a polymath. You have a good overview of different things. And I sort of want to leave it open. I know you're always going to inspire people,
Yeah.
and you're a freedom guy.
Yeah.
And the thing I like about you is you see the problem, but you also see the opportunity.
Right.
And I think that opportunity is really clear. I love that term, heritage skills. I think I'm going to steal that from you, because I always suffer on what I should call those things, like canning and pantry management and all of that stuff. It's something that used to be normal that is less normal now, and people are like, wow. As far as the parallel society and what we should use for money, I learned to use many different kinds of money, including crypto. But I think when you have something of value to offer, and other people in your network have something of value to offer, you figure out what works for value exchange. However you track that. They're all tracking systems.
Yeah, I agree. And throughout history, think of how people have figured out, think of how the Europeans traded with the Native Americans. I mean, the Native Americans didn't know what a shilling and a pence were, in British terminology. In fact, they didn't really care about that. What they really wanted was iron skillets and iron hatchets. And so yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, and goodness, the Lewis and Clark expedition, as they headed out, and they were at the Mandans, their villages in Illinois. What they needed was some of that dried bison that they had hanging up, some of that parched corn they had under their their houses, in their kind of root cellar things. And so so everybody has needs, and everybody has something they can offer. And I think that the creativity and the innovation in the human mind to be able to interact beyond language is almost incalculable.
That is so true. Okay, I got another question here. What are the biggest opportunities for young folks in agriculture as we move into the future, in your view?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, and I appreciate it being asked. I think that we are in an incredible opportunity for young people, because right now, in the next 15 years, half of all America's agriculture equity is going to change hands. That's land, buildings, and equipment, because the average farmer is now 60 years old. So in the next 15 years, half of all America's agriculture equity is going to change hands. That is unprecedented in civilization. No culture has ever had that big a transfer of agrarian equity that fast, except in conquest. Now, I'm not predicting that we're getting ready to be conquested. Yeah, maybe we are, maybe we aren't. Red Dawn might be closer than we think. Okay, but I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying that no society has ever gone through this big an agrarian equity transition this rapidly, ever. And so what that means is that a lot of this land that you see now is going to be available. Now, who's gonna buy it? Who's gonna or who's gonna manage it? Who's gonna get onto it? And of course, a lot of it right now is, there's a tremendous push right now by homesteaders to buy land, but there's also a lot of opportunity for the children who inherit the land to not want to sell it, but to hang on to it, and they're looking for managers. I get letters. I get requests all the time. We run this apprenticeship program, and there is a constant flow of people. Can you send me an apprentice? Can you send me a steward? Can you send me somebody to manage my place to be, because a lot of the people buying this land are in their 50s and 60s. You know, they've made money in the urban sector, and they do see what all three of us here see. They see what and they're cashing in their 401k, says, I'm gonna get my agrarian bunker, you know, and so they're investing in an agrarian bunker, but they've never driven a tractor. They don't know how to build a fence. They don't even, I mean, a guy asked me the other day, look, I don't have locust on my place. Can I use oak for posts? No, you can't use oak. It rots in 3 years. I ran into a guy recently that built a fence out of shagbark hickory. They were nice and straight, and he saw them sitting in his wood, so he cut them down, made a post. Those things, 3 years, those posts will be rotten. You know, you can't you can't develop. This is where your heritage skills come in. You can't develop heritage skills in a day. You know, this takes time, and so I think for young people, whether you hook up with a relative or a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, or you get onto a place, there is more and more and more land becoming available, and that's where what we preach about, mobile infrastructure, modular infrastructure, management intensive infrastructure, where you substitute human capital for financial, pharmaceutical, and energy capital. You know, those are platforms that a young person can launch into farming without much money. I said without much. You almost need a little nest egg. You almost every new enterprise needs a little nest egg. All right, which is why you need to get out of debt. You know, so drive a junky used car. You know, learn some mechanical ability, or get friends with somebody that has some mechanical ability. And, you know, maybe all you can do is play a guitar. Well, serenade his wife while he fixes your car, you know, and get yourself financially to where you've got a smidgen of a nest egg that you can, you know, develop something. But yeah, I can hardly, imagine the opportunities right now for young people entering farming. I just think it's a golden time. And not only that, but if you're young, I mean, you know, I'm way over the hill. Okay. And I don't do social media. I don't have a smartphone. I don't know how to I don't have Facebook. I have people, you know, in the business on the farm that know how to do that, but they're all younger than I am. And so the advantage of a young person is, you know, how to do this social media stuff. You can manipulate that. You can do that. And so you can get your word out. You can message, you can post Instagram pictures, and you can develop those contacts and that brand name. You can enter that with your own just savvy and developing your own story, so much easier than we could back when it was U.S. Postal Service and a typewriter and snail mail, and at night you come in and try to make phone calls. And so I just think there's a lot of neat opportunity and tools to be able to leverage in today's young person entering farming.
Yeah, I headed out to our farmers market for the first time this year a few weeks ago, and I got there and there were no farmers. There was a lady selling fry pies. And I walked up to her and I asked her, so where is everybody? And she said, this one isn't coming. This one has been struggling with long-term health conditions and may or may not come. And this one got a cold this week and isn't going to be there. And I thought, I've always known this farmer's market was going to age out because they're all retirement age. They have been for years. And only one of them had a child who might come up behind him.
Yeah.
And I see this year the child has not come up behind him. So I thought, okay, well, game on, because I've always used the farmer's market as my backstop. If I don't grow enough beans to put up for the winter, I just buy a bushel from them. That's gone now. And it's gone in 1 year.
Wow, what a powerful story. That's amazing. But yeah, you're right. That is true all over. Well, it's true in all the. It's not just farming; it's the trades. I mean,
Yeah.
look at the average age of a plumber, an electrician, a welder. I mean, the world is the oyster for somebody who knows a trade and and knows how to do these things. The old classic, The Millionaire Next Door. That was a really powerful book back when it first came out, The Millionaire Next Door, and it dispelled every myth about millionaires. And what it showed was millionaires are not white collar; they're blue collar. They're vocational people. They're excavators and plumbers and electricians who just live cheaply, and they don't look. True millionaires don't look like millionaires. And I think there's a lot of truth in that.
How much of the farmland's being lost to the death tax, inheritance tax, Joel?
Well, it's a huge amount. I mean, right now there's not much being lost to the actual tax itself, because the tax is very, very high. I mean, the exclusion is what, $6 million or something. It's very, very high right now. So there's not much pressure on it from a tax standpoint. What the pressure is in the inheritance process itself. It's the land is moved to children, How should I say this? In a way that doesn't facilitate succession. So you got three kids. One of them loves the farm, stays there, runs it with dad and mom. The other two go to town, and then suddenly the kid is 50 years old, inherits it, but in an undivided 3-part interest. And the two siblings or one of the siblings wants his money or wants her money. All right. Well, what are you going to do? Farmers are notoriously land rich, cash poor. The third interest for that sibling is $600,000. Well, the one that stayed on the farm certainly doesn't have that much money. And the other sibling that doesn't want it sold, but doesn't want to farm it, doesn't want to buy out the other interest. And so it gets split up. And so that's what happens is that it's not actually the inheritance taxes right now. Now, it could be if Biden gets what he wants, that will become an issue again, like it was, 20 years ago before Bush Jr. really fixed that. He set us on a course that we're still enjoying from his tenure. But if Biden gets what he wants, it will be an issue again. Right now, it's still not, because I think Americans still they still like farmers. People, even non-farmers don't want to hurt farmers. So farmers have an inordinate amount of clout, which is why they get, crop insurance and all sorts of things in the farm bill, an inordinate for an inordinate number of people. But it's the ramifications of the inheritance. It's the succession plan that actually is what's making this transfer difficult.
So if you're a farmer and you're listening, reward the child that follows your path.
Yes.
And the other two left, so they're going to have to make their own way. Are you seeing any issues with water rights? I keep hearing about major corporations and stuff coming in and buying all the water rights, and then farms being turned off from water. Are you hearing any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, that's all out west. It's not east of the Mississippi. East of the Mississippi,
Okay.
we're in pretty good shape. But west of the Mississippi, that is a very much a growing problem. But the problem there is that the ability to impound water has been criminalized. And so it used to be you could build a pond and you could actually strategically impound surface runoff, floodwaters, if you will, that would become a flood. You could actually impound those and use them later. But recently with, EPA rules and the navigable waters of the America, all that kind of stuff, wetlands, it's become almost impossible for a rancher out, west of the Mississippi to build an impoundment, even though even though we're now out there, we're probably 1/3 of the surface water impoundments that there were before the Europeans came from beaver ponds. 500 years ago, North America was over 8% water. Today, we're less than 4% water because there were 200 million beavers making ponds. And so the idea of impounding water and holding water on the landscape is very, very anxious and very helpful from a flooding, hydration, spring flow, ambient temperature, all for lots and lots of reasons. But the English are and I'm saying English like Great Britain, the English and Scottish and Irish are all a water drainage society. We're not a hydration society. And so everybody that comes from the wet areas of Europe basically come to a landscape viewing it as a drainage issue, not a hydration issue. And unfortunately, way more land surface of the world is in desperate need of hydration, not drainage. Not very much needs drainage, but the inordinate influence that the British, the Irish, the Scottish, the wet part, the Dutch, the inordinate effect that they've had in colonization and developing cultures and civilizations around the world. And they've done this in Australia, done this in New Zealand, done this in the U.S. Everywhere that British kind of, and I'm using British in a very broad, the UK, everywhere that UK footprint went around the planet, it has destroyed the local hydrology because that civilization came from a water drainage mentality as opposed to a water hydration mentality. And we're, as a nation, we're still suffering from it. So is New Zealand, so is Australia. We're still suffering from that same mentality.
Yeah, it's interesting when I didn't know about permaculture 15 years ago. I knew who you were 15 years ago, but I didn't realize that connection. And I was on my homestead for a good 8 or 9 years before I learned what this thing was, realized I'd done everything wrong, and brought in Nick Ferguson. And the first thing we started doing was changing where the water goes and how the water goes on the property. Right. And when you're a homesteader, you're like, oh, I just want to grow my meat or my vegetables or any of these things. Why am I messing around with my landscape? Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, the difference on this place since finishing all of that rejiggering is amazing. Plants are growing themselves. It's, the transition doesn't take very long once you start hydrating the land again.
Yes.
And this is in Tennessee where it rains like twice a week all summer long when we have a normal summer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, you would think most people say, "Oh, Tennessee doesn't have any water problems." Oh, yes, it does. Tennessee has droughts just like every place else, and so this hydration is a big deal. So yeah, I'm a big fan of permaculture. Of course, we've done a lot of that stuff here. We've built ponds and ponds and ponds. We have the thing here that the most unseen, unappreciated development that we have here is our 12 miles of gravity flow buried water line that gives us 70 pounds of pressure gravity over 12 of a network of 12 miles of buried water line over the whole farm. We didn't put that in a day, that's a multi-year, another leg. But man, oh man, to have that water is incredible. And I have, in my book Polyface Micro, I have a whole chapter devoted to that whole water topic, because I agree with you, Nicole. The fact that 1/3 of all raindrops become surface runoff because they either come too fast or in too much quantity to be absorbed by the soil. So if you're in a 30-inch rainfall area, which basically every place east of the Mississippi is in at least a 30-inch rainfall area, most of us are in a higher area, but 30 is divisible by 3, so we'll use that. The 30-inch rainfall area divided by 3 is 10 inches per acre per year. Well, what's an acre inch of water? An acre inch of water is 30,000 gallons. So east of the Mississippi, every single acre loses 300,000 gallons of water a year in surface runoff. So
That's just
it's mind-boggling. So just imagine if, Louis Bromfield from Malabar Farm wrote about this in the 1950s. He said, when you do great big dam projects on the Mississippi with the Army Corps of Engineers, you're too far downstream. You've already got too much water. It's too much force, too much. What we need, he said, was millions of farm ponds high on the landscape, which again, he was before permaculture, but he got the concept. You want to go high on the landscape with a lot of small ponds, like imagine, cow hoof prints, big, like cow hoof prints all over the upper landscape. And the cumulative effect of all those little, 200 to million gallon farm ponds is you suddenly control that flooding. And the beavers did it, and we can do it again. We don't have to be beavers. We've got excavation equipment, and we can do it again and hide and redeem that landscape. Powerful concept.
Yeah, it's funny how true environmentalism leads you places that are different than the popular environmental solutions are.
Right.
What if we actually stopped the flooding instead of talked about it and failing at it?
Yeah, that's
Imagine.
right. Yeah, right.
All right, we've been going about an hour. Do you have time for one more question from the live stream, or?
I do. I've got about 10 more minutes.
Okay, so this question comes from York Meadow Farm. What are your thoughts on irrevocable trusts to ensure land stays in the family and state?
Yeah, so irrevocable trust, that is certainly another mechanism. So I'm going to answer it like my guru friend Todd, who does our Stockman Grass kind of succession articles about succession. His thing is this. He says the actual mechanism you use is not all that difficult. What's difficult is deciding who is going to run it, who's going to do it. In other words, envisioning after your death. So let's say your mom and dad, okay, and you're making this. What is the plan when we can't do it anymore? What is the plan going forward? Who's going to do what? Once that is settled, the actual mechanics of whether you do an irrevocable trust or you start doing forgivable $10,000 or $15,000 annual gifts that accrue to the estate, whether you do a term life insurance policy or any number of other things, or just inheritance outright, or whatever. The actual mechanism is not the critical discussion. The critical discussion is, what's it going to look like 5 years after I'm gone? Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to be responsible? And how do we ensure that the person who takes the risk and the responsibility gets incentivized and rewarded to maintain the family legacy? That's the question. You solve that question, and the mechanics are pretty simple.
That's a great answer. And it looks like there was a lot of worry about losing the farm in the live stream today. So,
Joel, how many people on a normal day actually work on your property?
So there are about 20 to 23 of us, and we have numerous part-timers. We have some folks that work from home in marketing and sales. We have people that come a day a week. Like we have an accountant who comes a day a week, those kinds of things. So if you take all that together, we're generating about 22 salaries.
Got it.
That's awesome. Okay, let's go once around the horn before we wrap up. Pitch whatever you'd like to pitch, Joel. Polyface or anything coming up in the future that you'd like to talk about, and then we'll go to John and I'll wrap up.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, if you want to know more about us, certainly our website, polyfacefarms.com, is a pretty eclectic, comprehensive website. We try to keep it current. And I mean, there's everything there from food to swag to news articles to, you know, I do a blog. I'm not religious about it, unfortunately. It's kind of a hit and miss blog, but it's the musings of the lunatic farmer. On our farm, we're doing numerous gatherings this year. If you want to come to a wellness summit or to the real exciting one, in my view, is we're having Jairo Restrepo from Colombia. He's the world's #1 homemade biofertilization guru. So he goes out in the woods and finds fungus and mycelium, identifies it, and then brews it, concocts it, and makes special teas to make your own phosphorus and make your own fertilizers, primarily for, you know, for homestead scale, and garden scale. But talk about a skill to know. To be able to remediate and be able to look at, well, this, you know, this plant here has a magnesium deficiency. You know, what can I find here and concoct and alleviate that magnesium deficiency? So he's going to be doing a 3-day workshop here later in the summer. All these gatherings are on the website, and glad to have you. One of my most exciting, you know, projects for the year is going to be a new book coming out early September. Hopefully it'll be available. And the title is Homestead Tsunami, Good for Country, Critters, and Kids. And it's the why of homesteading. And so I've written to 3 people in that book. The first person is the person that's still in the city that's on the line. Oh man, you know, can we actually go out where we see stars and Papa John's Pizza doesn't deliver? Is that actually possible? You know, so the fence sitter. The second person is the friend of the fence sitter. All those well-intentioned friends that say, man, could you get this stupid idea out of your head? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Don't you know the city's where it's at, and you know, you got to be here. And then the third person is the person who did make the jump a year or 2 ago, and they're discouraged. They came to the country with all these fantasies. Now the cows got mastitis, the cucumbers have powdery mildew, and the neighbor's dog just ate half their chickens, and they're discouraged, and they need to rediscover their first love and be reaffirmed and encouraged as to finding and appreciating why they made that break in the first place, and be encouraged. So I'm really looking forward to the book. I'm hoping that it really helps this whole self-reliance movement from a cultural why standpoint to get people to understand how good this is for so many.
Great. That sounds great. John.
I'll use my time to just say, Joel, this will be worth your time when you come out here. We draw a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life, and a lot of them run businesses and they just want to get out of the city. There's going to be, I'll bet there's 700 or more people here at this event. And there are people that need to hear your message. And I went to the Rogue Food Conference in Nashville, or outside of Nashville, a few years ago. And when I walked in, you were sitting at the front entrance, just taking notes. And I walked up and I said, you've got to be the top in your industry. Do you still find that you need to take notes? And what you told me was, I'm here so that I can speak to everybody coming in, so that I know what message I need to give you. And I can't wait to see you. When I left that day, I said, I feel like there's a void in my life and I don't know what that is. I said, I feel like I'm pulled to do something. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm going to do something that puts me in a position in the future to where I do some kind of business with you, Joel. And Joel, you said, I'll be on the lookout. And I know that didn't mean anything. I'm sure you hear that a million times. But I am very excited for you to be coming here to my home and my property here. And I can't wait.
Thank you. Great.
And I'll wrap us up with this. Joel has been very gracious with his time with us. I know a lot of people want to get him on their shows. And he is coming to the Self-Reliance Festival in October. If you want to see Joel, tickets are early bird special right now, $75. That's at selfreliancefestival.com. And if you want to get more, there is a chicken processing workshop the day after that Joel is kicking off with a demonstration. So it's a little extra time. It's a smaller group of people. You're more likely to get a word in edgewise with him. Joel has been a motivator for me for many years to make the right decision. When I met him the first time, he doesn't remember this, I'm sure, but he was invited to speak as part of my political think tank movement. And I was giving a presentation on how to use stories to persuade people. And he came up to me, probably because the event organizers knew I was really upset that I had missed his intensive workshop because they had me presenting somewhere else during that time, and said, "Hey, I only have 5 minutes, but I wanted to see the beginning of your presentation." And I launched into a presentation about telling the story of why we should strip the planet to build the economy. And as I'm telling the story, I'm like, this is not true to where my heart is. I actually don't want to strip the planet of its resources. I do think it's important to balance the planetary impact of what we need to survive and what takes care of the planet. And I think we can find that balance. And I need to change what I do. And I have changed from being in the free market think tank world to what I do now, where that balance can be achieved, where I see people take the first step and the second step and change their lives for the better and change the world around them. And so I don't know, you don't know this, but you were one of the motivators of that change.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
I'm super excited to finally be able to have you at an event. I remember I asked you 2 years ago, what's your fee? You told me your fee. I took a big gulp and I was like, you're worth every penny. In my head, that's all I was thinking. And I'm like, I'm going to make that happen. So can't wait to see you in October. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you both. It's been a delight, and you're both movers and shakers and doers, and I love spending time